Hi everyone, it's Mark here. I want to help you a little bit to understand how to make a winning submission for a hackathon. Since this is a virtual hackathon, what you're going to do is you're going to make your submission in the form of an MP for a YouTube video. In a face-to-face hackathon, you have to think of it as a set of judges come around, a bell rings, and then you have 4 minutes or 5 minutes typically to demonstrate your solution to them. And then after, they might ask you some questions and then they go off to the next team. So we're sort of simulating that environment by having you submit a 4-minute YouTube video. What is going to happen is that the judges for the hackathon will be reviewing that just in the same way as they would be walking around from table to table looking at your submission. So the students ask, okay, so what is it that I should do in these 4 minutes? So that's what I want to talk about today. So the judging criteria really has to, you'll see here that it has to do with the level of presentation. So the point of this little talk with you is that your presentation really counts for a lot. Then of course another thing is it's all about innovation, and you heard just how important it is, or how much people are relying on innovation on your behalf because you're affected by these things. And then the level of completeness, which means have you thought this through? Have you been able to demonstrate all the pieces of this system? I'm going to concentrate here in this little talk on the presentation, and indeed it actually counts for a lot. I've done, I don't know, probably 10 or so different hackathons, so I've got a lot of experience with this. I've been a judge, I've been watching the judges, being organizer, etc. So I know how this works, and I can tell you exactly what it says here, that there is a such thing as teams that have absolutely fabulous idea, awesome code, working solution, overcome all kinds of challenges, but they don't win. And it can happen if they're not able to communicate what they've done to the judges. On the other hand, we've also seen teams where the code is flaky. It didn't even really work particularly well. The program, they were junior programmers, maybe they weren't that gifted or something like that, but they still won because of the level of innovation that they had and their ability to communicate to the judges what they wanted to do. So we just don't want to discount how important this particular piece is. Another thing is that this whole sort of hackathon is not just about computer programming. That may be a part, but what turns out to make the difference here isn't so much how good of a programmer you are, but rather, let's look at those 4 points there. How well you can communicate, what level of systems analysis or business analysis skills. So business students and systems analysis students have big advantages here because of their ability, because of what you've been trained or what you learn about in terms of analyzing business processes. Project management skills are big because this is obviously a project, and the reason why a hackathon is so exciting is because it's a microcosm. So it's like the whole sort of systems analysis and design process collapsed into a few days. And then there's also a huge amount of sort of teamwork and leadership and psychology and sociology involved in this. So it's not just the computer programming that counts. Where do things go wrong? You get 4 minutes to do this. Now, I say 4 minutes, so I get students saying, sir, ours is going to be like 4 minutes and 10 seconds. Is that okay? Of course it's okay. So 4 minutes is the guideline, okay? It's really modeled after what happens in a real hackathon or elevator pitch and this kind of thing. Or also if you're thinking like a TV show like the Shark Tank or Dragon's Den or something like this, where you have a couple of minutes to pitch your idea to a group of investors. So it's modeled after that. So usual comments that I get is, sir, like we put so much work into this. The system is so complicated. Like I can't, that's for other people to communicate it in 4 minutes. We need 30. Like ours is so special and so different, and that's just completely wrong. So you have to do it in 4 minutes. And insisting that you need longer isn't a sign of strength of your solution. It's more a sign of weakness. You have to be able to explain what your system does. A really good yardstick would be to explain what you're doing to your mom, or explain what you're doing to your uncle, right? Or explain what you're doing to your roommate. That would be, a good yardstick. Another thing that goes wrong is they got 4 minutes of time and then they spend the time on the wrong thing. And with that, I mean, you don't have to repeat the challenge set. Like, we know what the challenge set is. Everybody knows, all the judges know. So don't tell them things that they already told you, right? They're more interested in what you've got. Don't spend time on, unless you really have nothing else to show, but don't spend your time on uninteresting scenarios and use cases like sometimes people spend a lot of time on because they learned it at school, like how to do a login or having a website come up and here's how the user ID gets a password. That may not be that may not really be the essence, that may not be the key use case that you're trying to explain. Another problem is you might have a very clear image of what you want to do in your head, but you just can't get it in proper English language sentences. So really, really important thing here is to use clear language. But if you're having trouble with that, use models. And so again, as students, most of you business students, computer students, you're aware of what some of these models are, UML, etc. But also give you a couple of hints here just in case you're you don't have much experience with that. Another thing is the judges also want to see the human side of you. This is also consistent with what happens in the marketplace, where probably if you weigh what happens in an HR side, probably 50% or less of why they want to hire you has to do with your hard skills. So in other words, whether you can do, that programming language or use that modeling tool that you've explained. More than 50% or more of the reason why they want to hire somebody has to do with their quote unquote soft skills, which is really more like the human side of you. So the judges are really quite interested in you and understanding you better and what makes you tick. So here's sort of my master slide to help you with your 4-minute video and what should be in there. It's like, okay, there's like 6 things here. So, maybe some are 30 seconds, 15 seconds, a little longer on others, but the 6 components are: introduce yourselves. So again, you're not an in-person, so it's really important that you get on there, that every member on your team is on that video and says, hi, I'm Mark. Your group name, you don't really have to, you just have to have it on your backdrop. So usually what you want is your first slide should be something that has a good impact on me, which is like a nice visual with your team name and your team logo and what your project name is. You don't have to waste your time. People can read, so you don't have to waste your time reading what it says on your slide. Okay, but what they do want to know is, like, introduce yourself, say, hi, I'm Mark. And then they want to know what your role in the team was. So, on this particular team, I took on the project management role, or I was the QA person, or I handled the data side, or I did everything, or whatever you want to say. And because they're interested in you personally, also say, my passion or the reason I was drawn to this hackathon was because, I've seen people suffer from mental health problems, or I have a granny that we have to take care of, or something like this. So they understand a little better what your passion was coming into this. The next thing is you have to be able to do a problem statement. So you have to state, like, there's a million things in digital health. So they want to know what the scope of what the domain, what the scope of the problem was that you're going to tackle and address. Okay, so you have to be specific here, but what you need to do here when you're stating the problem is you have to convey that you've looked and analyzed the different stakeholders that are involved in your challenge set, and you understand what their goals are or what the problem is and how it impacts them and what you're going to do. So you have to have done some analysis on the challenge set. And then I'll provide a clear problem statement. I'm going to give you a template for a problem statement if you don't know what I'm talking about. Now that we've stated what the problem is, now we want to tell people how you're going to solve this problem. So this is, dealing with a couple of famous things, like you have to describe what your system is going to do and how your system is going to do it. Describing what your system is going to do is really a matter of systems analysis. And there what you wind up with is you want to be able to describe somehow what your system is going to behave like, and you might want to describe somehow what your system is going to be structured like. And then how you want to do it is a matter of, what your design was. So there you can specify, all right, here's a solution stack that we used, or here's some techniques or some methodologies that we had in mind. Really good ways for communicating requirements, functional requirements, is what are called use cases, right? Or user stories. So maybe you know what those are, maybe you don't. I'll give you, as a beginner, maybe user stories are a good place to go. But whether you're a business student or computer student, etc., what you want to do here is you want to convey sort of the vision for your system using some kind of a model, even if it's some kind of a picture that you drew or an architecture diagram. So the next thing you want to do now is, now you've communicated a vision for what your solution is going to be, what innovation is in there. Now you want to demo it. So what you want to do is pick one or two consequential use cases or user stories and demonstrate how they're going to work. Demonstrating it would mean like walk me through the model, walk me through the mock-up, show me, act out a script that does this, show me working code, test the working code, etc. That's what you want to do. So at this point, and you want to spend, a minute or so of the 4 minutes actually working through, showing code, showing something running, doing your mock-ups, etc. The next thing, this is where overwhelmingly we always hear feedback from the sponsors. They say the students really weren't able to convey proper sort of business case. So even though you might be a programming student, many of you are business students, so you understand what I'm talking about here, but you have to somehow address, all right, who's going to be using this? Who's going to buy this? What is going to be, what are the costs going to be, and how are we going to get those costs back? So they want to have some high level understanding of your return on investment. And then they start to get interested in, all right, what do you guys want to do next? What did you learn from this, right? So you can start to address things like that. Finally, you want to wrap it up somehow. And judges are always interested in, what kind of challenges did you have and how did you overcome them? So what did you find like difficult here, and what did you do? So it's perfectly fine to go through disaster story or war story or some kind of problem that took you down. They'd like to hear that. And also conclude with what you think your innovation is. Okay, so these are the 6 things that you want to do in your 4 minutes. Doing a stakeholder analysis, that's where you sort of have to start. I'm thinking of maybe putting another video up that may be a little longer where I can explain this to you in a little more detail, but you do have to look at, what stakeholders do you have there? And the thing is, the stakeholders, each one of these groups has some kind of a different need, some kind of a different requirement. So you have to analyze who the stakeholders are in your domain and system. Since we're dealing with health and digital health, you'll see that there's an incredible amount of stakeholders that are involved. And so it's not really for lack of stakeholders. The hard part is to figure out which one of those are relevant to your system. So there's going to be stakeholders involved in the system that you're building. There's going to be stakeholders involved that are functional stakeholders, so they might have different roles that they play in the company. And then there's organizational stakeholders that might be related, it's their role, like are they managers, executives, operational people, etc. Here is what a problem statement looks like. So if you haven't seen this before, I would advise you to use this template. So it's something that it's like a model that helps you to structure your language in such a way that it conveys what the business problem is. And you can use this format that we have here. So it's a prescribed format, the problem of, and then you describe the problem effects. You describe what stakeholders are affected, the impact of which, and you describe whatever the cost is or the loss, and the fact that your solution would solve this, and you can have functional requirements or categorization of your solution. The best way to describe a functional requirement is with what's called a use case or a user story. Most of the students here are taught this kind of thing at some point in their studies. Here's an example of a user story. So if you're a systems analysis student, you know how to do these use cases and things like that. But if you're not, if it's a little bit new to you, look up user story. This is the most popular way to do these kind of functional requirements. And it's a 1-sentence description of a work-related task. So it's always going to follow that format there at the bottom as a role. I want to achieve a goal or function so that, and then you list out the benefits. So I put a user story there. as an example for you. So you see that sort of format there where it's as a credit card holder, I want to view my statement balance so that I can pay the balance due. And then along with that, there's acceptance criteria. So this deals with what they call definition of done. So how can I really tell that you've done what you said you wanted to do? A lot of this, there was some point there earlier, is if you really do it right, you always see sort of a verb noun thing. So there's something that you do, and then there's something that you do it to. I want to view my statement balance. I want to pay balance due. So that verb noun combination is always great. Here's a little template that might help to create a solution vision. Again, if you're struggling. So it's just a way to break down the components that go into a vision, and then you can rebuild it and explain it in whichever way that you think is best. So again, some points here on how to put a 4-minute video together. You can ping me or call me. I think there's a video from last hackathon with a detailed sort of systems analysis. If I see a lot of demand for, hey Mark, can you walk us through or spend 30 minutes on how to do some of these things in more detail, I'll be happy to do that and post that for you. Good luck on the hackathon.